Although putting together an enthralling horror film is no easy task, nailing the ending is the hardest part. No matter how good a movie is, not delivering a satisfying conclusion can leave a lasting blemish. However, there are a couple of woeful slashers, sci-fi flicks and body horrors which have the opposite issue, since they save their best ideas for the last 10 minutes. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture here with 10 terrible horror movies that had unbelievably good endings. Number 10. Ring Zero Birthday. Because Ring 2 felt like a retread of the original Ringu, making a prequel that explored the creator of the killer tape, Sadako, seemed like a sensible decision. Ring Zero Birthday takes place when Sadako's powers first manifested, which caused her family and friends to turn against her. She was depicted as nothing more than a rage-filled spirit up until this point, so it was refreshing to see her being humanized like this. Sadly, Ring Zero comes across as a lazy Carrie ripoff. Also, the source of Sadako's abilities don't make any sense. The only time the prequel does justice to the original is during the final confrontation, when Sadako's stepfather realizes she can't control her abilities. He clobbers her across the head before dumping her into a well. Although this was meant to be a quick and painless death, Sadako survives the blow and the fall. As she looks up, she sees him sliding a cover over the well. Knowing she'll succumb to a slow and agonizing death, Sadako lets out one last desperate scream before her stepfather seals her in total darkness. Number 9. Mirrors. Mirrors opens with divorced ex-cop Ben Carson starting his new job as a night watchman at a burned-down store. Ben soon discovers there's a dark entity trapped in the building's mirrors, who intends to break into the real world. Even though Mirrors has an intriguing premise, there's little here that hasn't been done before. What's worse is Mike Flanagan used the same premise for Oculus 5 years later and made a far better movie for nearly 1/10 of the budget. Coupled with the laughable CGI and the overly long runtime, Mirrors is anything but compelling. But just when it seems okay to check out, Mirrors throws a major curveball during the final inning. When Ben blows up the store, he successfully vanquishes the supernatural being. After pulling himself out of the rubble, Ben notices the lettering of every poster, book and sign is reversed. While looking into a mirror, Ben sees he has no reflection, proving he's now trapped in the mirror world. Everything else about Mirror's story and structure is hackneyed, but this original and depressing revelation packs one hell of a punch. Number 8. The Killing Gene. In The Killing Gene, police officer Eddie Argo learns there's a serial killer in New York who gives each victim a choice to sacrifice themselves or let a loved one die. The Killing Gene has promise, but it's hampered by a muddled story and excessive subplots. Phenomenal actors like Sally Hawkins and a pre-famed Tom Hardy are wasted in their paper-thin roles. Stellan Skarsgård has ample screen time, but his talents aren't enough to make his depthless character compelling. Fortunately, the film is almost saved by its thought-provoking twist. In the end, Argo learns the assailant is Jean Lerner, who was forced years ago to kill her mother to save her own skin. This incident convinced Jean all people are selfish, compelling her to give her victims a choice to have someone else die in their place. Just as Jean is about to slaughter her latest victim, Argo begs her to take his life instead. Upon doing so, she acknowledges she was wrong about humanity, urging Jean to turn herself in. If the rest of the movie had this level of suspense and intrigue, The Killing Gene could have been something really special. Number 7. Glass. Although anticipation wasn't high for M. Night Shyamalan's psychological horror Split, it was his most refreshing movie in over a decade. Not only did James McAvoy's tour de force performance as Kevin Crumb steal the show, the revelation that Split took place in the same world as Unbreakable was a shocker for everyone. And when it was announced both stories would conclude in a crossover called Glass, the hype was through the roof. Sadly, the final installment of this trilogy was underwhelming, slow, and surprisingly unambitious. Glass wasn't as bad as some of Shyamalan's other duds, but it failed to match expectations. Despite its flaws, Glass successfully interconnects the plots from previous installments and ties up loose ends. During the showdown, it's revealed the train crash induced by Elijah Price resulted in the death of Kevin's father. Because of this, Kevin was cared for by his abusive mother, which caused him to develop 24 personalities. As a result, Elijah is directly responsible for creating Kevin's persona, the Horde. But that's not all. Despite Staples' attempts to quash any evidence of superpowers, Elijah's mother, Joseph, and Casey released the footage of Kevin fighting David Dunn online, proving the existence of superhumans. Glass is far from perfect, but its final moments beautifully interconnect the key characters in a non-forced way and deliver a powerful epilogue. Number 6. As Above, So Below. In As Above, So Below, plucky scholar Scarlett Marlowe ventures into the catacombs of Paris with her team, hoping to find the legendary Philosopher's Stone. After discovering several demonic texts and artifacts, Scarlett begins to suspect she is literally walking into hell. As Above, So Below has the potential to be truly terrifying, especially since the catacombs is a very real place that harbours 6 million skeletons. But like most found footage docs, the visuals are often compromised by shaky cam and darkness. Although the jerky camera movements are meant to intensify the drama and claustrophobia, it's just annoying since it's difficult to tell what's going on half the time. But once Scarlett and her party find themselves in the bowels of the earth, the inchoate scares are swapped out for balls-to-the-wall nightmare fuel. Gargoyles burst from the walls, chattering teeth appear in every corner, blood gushes from puddles, and a burning car sucks Scarlett's tour guide into the ground. As Above, So Below suffers from a selection of overused horror tropes, but the last 20 minutes is an unforgettable trip, brimming with chaos and madness. Number 5. Saw 5. Despite the fact Saw is infamous for its gore, bloodshed was used sparingly in the original, mainly to keep costs down. Sadly, every follow-up was overly focused on upping the violence, which heavily compromised the plot and character development. Even though Saw 5 falls under this bracket, this sequel does finish with a glorious rug pull. As Agent Strahm closes in on the Jigsaw killer, Mark Hoffman, he heads into a gas house where he discovers a tape and a human-sized box. Although the tape urges Strahm to step into the makeshift coffin, the detective refuses, believing he's been led into a trap. When Hoffman appears, Strahm shoves him into the box, seemingly trapping him. To Strahm's surprise, closing the lid activates a machine that lowers the glass box underground. Not only that, the mechanism locks the doors and causes the walls to close in, giving Strahm no means to escape. Despite his best efforts to break out, Strahm is crushed to death while Hoffman looks on gleefully from below. Saw 5 may be an incoherent mess, but this finisher is unexpected and fittingly brutal. Number 4. Dead Silence. Dead Silence reveals how a master ventriloquist, Mary Shaw, was left humiliated by a boy during a show. When the child wound up dead, the townsfolk accused Mary of murder and had her executed. Years later, Jamie Ashen's wife is murdered immediately after receiving one of Shaw's dummies. Speaking to his stroke-stricken father, Edward, Jamie discovers Shaw is targeting everyone related to her killers, including him. Dead Silence has an intriguing premise, but it shoots itself in the foot by stuffing every scene with cliches. Any potential scares are diminished by distracting CGI, and the few tense moments are interrupted by unnecessary jump scares. The whole film would have been a waste of time if it wasn't for the last minute and a half. After seemingly destroying Mary Shaw's ghost, Jamie heads to his father's estate to let Edward know the nightmare is over. Jamie is horrified to see his dad has been dead for years and the Edward he spoke to before was a hollowed out corpse. Edward's body was being controlled like a puppet by his wife Ella, who had been possessed by Shaw. Before Jamie has a chance to react, Shaw possesses his body, completing her revenge. Dead Silence's last-minute twist is so clever. It's a pity it wasn't in a better movie. Number 3. Doom. Doom has all the failings moviegoers have come to expect from a video game adaptation. The characters are cheesy, the script is nonsensical, the pacing is uneven, and the acting is terrible. Worst of all, though, is that it fails miserably to capture the essence of the classic shooter. Even though demons are synonymous with Doom, the film discards this concept entirely and instead has our ensemble face off against the mutated humans. Seriously, why did they change it? It's like making a Harry Potter film without magic. Now that's not to suggest this adaptation isn't faithful to the source material. To replicate the style of the Doom game, the climactic shootout is structured from our hero's point of view in an unbroken 4-minute shot. Even though this could have failed miserably to translate to screen, the filmmakers pulled it off. This sequence, which took 3 months to prepare and 2 weeks to film, is entertaining from beginning to end. Thanks to a diverse mix of creative deaths, flawless camera work, effective jump scares, impressive CGI, and a comedic moment or two for the sake of levity, viewers can momentarily forget that they're watching total garbage. Number 2. April Fool's Day. In April Fool's Day, Kit and his college buddies head to the home of their friend Muffy for spring break. Keeping with tradition, Muffy plays pranks on her guests throughout the weekend. But when the students notice the phone lines have been cut, they're worried Muffy has taken the jokes too far. After Kit finds several of his friends have turned up dead, he realizes his life is in terrible danger. For the most part, April Fool's Day plays out like any other slasher, with nothing to differentiate it from other holiday-themed horrors. And when it's unveiled that Muffy is actually her evil twin sister Buffy, it feels like the film is scraping the bottom of the cliché barrel. But as Kit heads into the living room to hide, he finds the dead guests are alive, proving all the events that weekend were one huge gag at Kit's expense. Like the best twists, this truth bomb is effective, since viewers should have seen it coming. I mean, the title was a big clue. Even after viewers learn the truth, many were duped again during the final scene, when Nan seemingly slits Muffy's throat. However, it's revealed immediately after to be a ruse, since Nan used a fake razor. Kudos movie, you fooled us twice. Number 1. The Boy. The Boy opens with nanny Greta Evans being hired by a couple to look after their porcelain doll, who they pretend is their deceased son, Brahms. When Greta notices objects in the house have been moved, she begins to think there is something seriously wrong with the doll she's caring for. On a first watch, it's hard to get invested in the boy, since it seems embarrassingly predictable. While Greta tries to figure out what's going on, it's hard not to roll your eyes, certain the boy will conclude with the obvious revelation that the doll contains the spirit of Brahms. But in the third act, Greta learns that Brahms isn't dead and has been living inside the walls of his house since childhood. When Greta wasn't present, Brahms moved items around the house to give the impression his porcelain replica had a mind of its own. This is all contradicted in the even worse sequel, but let's just pretend that didn't happen, shall we? Even though the first 2/3 is pretty by the numbers, the final reveal proves how effectively the film misled the audience. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then do let us know in the comments down below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there. And I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.